dorje zemole bopa thamche le par dune ne hinda samba zang da din pe nyu jingi lo la dorje samba so devar shi pa na je sim lo song pa tar de tam po ra na chun chen ni gon do kan ke ka bi na ta kun hong tang kun tu yang ta pa go ni go de ta kun hong yin pa chen de ge tho ni rang ke din je tin chup je kan du tang hin du tho kor thang kor sala so ba la sa ne chun chen ni gon do se na de me ge be kun hong de de pang go ba tang chen de ni ne du jin pa che tham che se be che de sa na de me ge ba le mu je chok ke kun hong yin pe na ti kun hong ni bo ta le mu tang je chok ke kun hong ni po te ni me ge ba kun hong te tok tar de pang go song ri.
As it is said in a tantra called the Pinnacle Tantra, before listening to Dharma teachings or before putting the Dharma teachings into practice, it is very important to have a great motivation. Great motivation is free from any concern for this life. If you practice the Dharma for this life, then that kind of practice is based on the 8 worldly concerns. So therefore, in the practice of Dharma, our intention should not be in order to accomplish something temporary for this life, such as a high position or high status in the worldly society. Or we shouldn't practice the Dharma in order to get rid of temporary sicknesses and so forth. If we approach the Dharma for this kind of temporary purposes, then that kind of intention is very limited and it's not profound. So therefore, first of all, we need to make sure that we have great intention.
Zang to gebe kun hong tang to me ge kun hong kang yang ma ji pa ni me ja le che song pa tar de ti rang de a sa ve chu da le de cha pa za ma to zang to ge kun hong ma ji pa te ta lo ma ji kun hong te gebe kun hong la ju gebe kun hong te la yang ji be chem den chong song ge kun hong pa na ta ji be chem bo kun hong ta de sam ba ja cha sang chong cho to tho ji lo te ji go khu yu ri sam ba ja cha sang cho to cho to tho ji ne te ni nga ge chu ka ri de man do ji tu na ti te ge wa yang ta pa ti te pa chim bi chu ge 다 양당 바로 옹도 되게 되니까 그 통타 발송가 되 격추대 개와인 바 나가 추 가르 드럽나 되 양당 개가 란 로주 되게 삼바상 좀 톡기는 인고들이 송우리.
If we sit on the cushion with the neutral mind in order to listen to the teachings, then that is also not appropriate. We have to make sure that we have this great intention of enlightened mind or awakened mind. If we sit down in the teaching with a neutral mind, then it's very much like a dog following a man. A dog following a man has no purpose, no intention of any kind. It's just hanging around with the person. In the same way, if we listen to the teachings with a neutral intention, an intention which is neither virtuous nor non-virtuous, that is also something that we should get rid of. Especially from the point of view of Mahayana practitioners, we need to have this great intention of bodhicitta. With bodhicitta, even if we recite one mantra, such as Om Mani Padme Hum, it becomes a practice of the great vehicle or Mahayana. So therefore, the generation of bodhicitta is virtuous in the beginning, virtuous in the middle, and virtuous at the end.
kun hong che par ti san yin ji san cho ji chen de ne che dong sa ne yin ne ma za ba de yin de sa song che par kun ro we ne de dang bo ni thok ji de ge song ne ni khong ge song ji ta thu ki mo na na ti da la da mar si be da ne par si be thar pa dan tham je chi be par do ju pa si ba tham ye je to se be ma nam kha da nyam be sen jin tham ji de wa dan ti dong ha dang tar song du ge te nhiều tự làm việc ta phải dồn sang cho nó một thọ bát sa xong rồi sang cho thì xem ta Rinpoche rồi ta mấy ta sa giờ dùng sang nguyên giờ sang được ta tí sam ba thì chuyện nó có đi xong.
Lord Jugten Sumgon has said in the beginning of the Fivefold Mahamudra that loving kindness and compassion are like a steed, and if one does not win the race of benefiting sentient beings by riding on the steed of loving kindness and compassion, then the spectators of humans and God will not appreciate and not applaud. So therefore, the practice of loving kindness and compassion is very essential, and it's the foundation for all other practices. Therefore, in the Fivefold Mahamudra practice, Lord Jigten Sumgon has put the practice of loving kindness and compassion as the first. Basically, Lord Jigten Sumgon always believed that the teachings which are considered not very profound in other schools, other lineages, are considered very profound in my teachings. That's what Lord Jigten Sumgon always used to say. Keeping in that view of Lord Jigten Sumgon, we usually read in the opening prayers by saying, all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and so forth. So therefore, according to Lord Jigten Sumgon's approach of the Dharma, we need to begin by having a loving and kind and compassionate heart, compassionate mind for all living beings, including our enemies.
Kunzo Sancho Santa, Dundan Sancho Sam, Zotin Amba Nikon, Sinti, the Diego Yuri. Tampong Iran Sokata, Leda Paukalata, Sinti, the Sancho Sam, the Lola Diagona, the Hukundo Sancho Sam goes on good. They are taken to Kundola and Martin, but Tambatuna Tomajo, Tambatuna Matopa, young in there about Tomajo, so the Hukundo Sancho Sam, the Latin goes on the Tates on this.
A teaching can become teaching of the great vehicle or the lesser vehicle depending on the motivation of the person who is practicing the teaching. In other words, whatever we practice with the great intention of bodhicitta, it becomes a practice of the great vehicle. If there is no bodhicitta, then whatever we practice, and no matter how high and profound it is, it still remains the practice of a lesser vehicle. Now, therefore, as the follower of the great vehicle, we need to train ourselves in the two kinds of bodhicittas, or the awakened minds. The two kinds of bodhicittas are the relative bodhicitta and the ultimate bodhicitta. In order to realize the ultimate bodhicitta, we have to indispensably depend on the relative bodhicitta. It is said in the scripture that without depending on the relative truth, there is no way to realize the ultimate truth. And without realizing the ultimate truth, there is no way to attain complete enlightenment.
This Samba Zambo, the Jula Rank Samba in parties, Samba Zambo, Yorgona, that is Jovetabla, the Temi Yek Lord Yango only. Temi Yelata, Samba Temita, Hinge Temi, Gava Temi, Tanhon Temi, the Temi Yet, they get Lord Yanti, Rang Jula, Kundos Sanchos and Yek also.
So we need to begin by generating the relative bodhicitta. And the relative bodhicitta can take place only in a mind, in a heart which is pure, which is open and kind. The relative bodhicitta cannot occur in a heart which is negative, which is full of harmful intents. So, therefore, we have to begin by generating a heart which is open and kind. And the four immeasurables, the immeasurable love, immeasurable compassion, immeasurable joy, and immeasurable equanimity. these four practices are the kind of causes from where the relative bodhicitta can arise.
다 재미있게 된 흡벽깔라tin 삼바니 고송 재미있게 된 희우를 다 안서 로도 야역깔라 단형님 고송 고송 단형님 고송 때 가르핀 토리스나 디랑 그 삼바단 힘게 찌엔죠 때 니랑 차단 그 안서 콜마서 소단에서 콜마서 때 삼바단 힘게 찌죠 때니 고 냠신 형바로 온 거비 쳤다 단형 때게 그니 담고 로데도 용고송 단형 그 고송
Usually the order of the four immeasurables is immeasurable love and then compassion and joy and then equanimity. But when you put the into practice, it is more appropriate, or it's recommended to begin by training yourself in immeasurable equanimity. Because without having the sense of equanimity, your practice of love and compassion can become kind of biased and partial. So therefore, in order to have love and compassion which is impartial, which is equally extended to all beings, it is more practical to begin with the immeasurable equanimity. So, first of all, we need to know the meaning of equanimity. Equanimity means having no hatred towards enemies and no attachment towards those who are relatives, those who are near. So, when our mind is free from attachment and aversion, when our heart is filled with good intentions for all living beings equally, it is equanimity. So we usually have this habitual pattern or this tendency to be especially attached to those who are near and dear, to our relatives and parents and brothers and sisters and so forth. And we tend to have this habit to be not that kind and not that compassionate towards those who are not near and dear. And in fact, to enemies, we tend to have very strong hatred and so forth. So this kind of attachment and aversion seems to be quite real. But if we analyze the nature of these feelings, these emotions, they are not as real as they appear to be. If we think in terms of our past life and then present life and the future life, if we think in terms of these three times, then it seems that there is no great reason to be specially attached to those who are near and dear, and especially hateful or for unkind to those who are not near and dear. For instance, a lot of our friends and relatives become friends and relatives in this life because we are indebted to them. We have some kind of karmic debts to pay, and they take birth in this life as our children, as our brothers and sisters, and then we need to repay their kindness. We are indebted to them in many ways. And therefore, a friend or relative is not always a choice. It's there because of our karma. And then the people to whom we have very strong attachment in this life, they could have been our worst enemies in the past. And people who are our worst enemies in this life, they could have been the kindest person in the past. And right now, if we have enemies in this life, they can become the best friend in our future lives. So in this way, nobody is really an enemy, and nobody is really a friend. So therefore, if we think in this way, then we find not so good reason to be specially attached to certain people and hateful to another.
Chuma te kimi te ke pa te ta cha sa ndu de te ke la to so lu lang te ke ne khorang so ke cha sa ari ta ta ya khong to dong che thu la ta kimi ke pu pang dang de pa cha sa che ma la de le ni da wo pang de zong chu me choi yo ba ma do che yo la te ri ho la de ta ta ya khong ke ti ze du ta kimi te ke pu pang du te mun chu khorang ke da wo de da wo de ni ha rang cái bùi về cho chi này đi sẽ đi cha san được được có món ăn cái pa đi được pa cái cha thế này na chơi đi được cái ama đi món ăn ama thì ama thì cái ta đi món ăn chua thì rồi ba thì sao thì lên đúng món ăn bang thì cái đau thì bang để đi cha san được apa cái pa cái cha sao thì lên đúng thế chứ mà sự tiền thôi thì ta pa cha sao thì mà là đằng để nghe đau bang được giống chúng mấy chơi rồi bang bang khơi chơi là cái món đó giống thì tôi lấy dùm để tận đa bên tận khổ lậu đến cha tôi tận đa khổ lậu tận đa đi để đi xong hiện giờ đó là.
Regarding the lives that we change in the past, present, and future, there is a story about a great master called Katayana. This great master once walked in a place, and he came across a woman, and this woman had a baby in her laps. And then she was having some meat, and then around her there was a dog, and the dog was trying to have a morsel of meat, but she was trying to drive away the dog. She was trying to be very unkind to the dog. And at this situation, when Katayana looked through his clairvoyant power, he came to know that the baby in her laps was her worst enemy in the past. And the meat she was eating was of an animal who was the rebirth of her own father. And then the dog, which was around, was the rebirth of her own mother. So in fact, what she was doing is that she was taking care of her worst enemy in the past. She was having the meat of her father, and she was trying to beat up the dog, which was his own mother in the past. At this point, Katayana said that you are eating the meat of the father and beating up the mother and taking care of your worst enemy. When I look at this samsaric life, it appears to me as something very ridiculous.
Rang tenda vele len chap long khor de u si ri song te ti tenda la te dong ha me do pa song na ti te rang na song ne ke thele vele ti yang nge chem bo sin de te ta hu che ke la ne pa cha de ti len cha de rang na khor de te len cha khor le ke te ta ri song de te ke ti ta rang ke ta tenda ni nyen de la tenda cha na tenda se de na te ta cha na ta to de ma ta tu so ma sang ta na ta cha sa de la to cha sa ve ne khor.
So therefore, if we have attachment to friends and relatives and so forth, it is very helpful to know that they have not always been our friends, they have not always been our enemies. They are our friends and relatives in this life, not by our choice. It's because we have to pay karmic debts to them, and then that's how we are kind of related to them karmically. So therefore, when people harm us, it is also very helpful to think that this person is being harmful to me because I've been harmful to this person in the past, and it's a result of my karma. In this way, if we think wider in terms of former lives, in terms of future lives, and so forth, then it becomes easier to get rid of attachment and aversion. So an enemy is not enemy forever. An enemy is not always harmful. Sometimes even if we consider people as enemy and try to harm, they do not really harm in return. In fact, sometimes some people become very famous and very well respected by defeating enemies. So an enemy is not always the source of defeat. An enemy is not always harmful. An enemy can also become a cause of victory. For instance, in some conflicts, people kill enemies, and that they become very famous and very well admired by a lot of people. So that shows that the enemy is not kind of 100% negative. It can also be a cause of admiration. And also, enemies are very helpful in the practice of Dharma. If there is nobody to harm us, if there is nobody who troubles us, then we have no incentives to generate the sense of renunciation, the willingness to attain, freedom from cyclic existence. Because there are enemies, because there are troubles, they kind of encourage us to pursue the path of Dharma. So therefore, enemies are very helpful in the practice of Dharma. So, if we do not consider anybody as enemy forever, then enemies can be changed into very good friends. For instance, when we have problems with people, if we do not consider those people as real enemies, if we talk to them properly and if we try to be patient with them, then gradually those enemies can become the best friends. So therefore, it is always good not to regard others as enemies forever. So it's also possible that our best friends, the people for whom we have special affection, they can become the worst enemy. They can deprive us of all our wealth, and they can even sometimes become the friends of our enemies and then attack back. So therefore, friends are also not friends forever. So therefore, friends and relatives are not always helpful. If we look at our relationship with friends and relatives and so forth, as a Dharma practitioner, then the relatives and friends seems to be an obstacle in the path of Dharma, because for friends and relatives and children and so forth, we have to spend a lot of time making money and earning the living and so forth, and also they can create obstacles and hindrances in the practice of Dharma by keeping us busy with different obligations. So therefore, a friend is not permanently a friend. An enemy is not an enemy, permanently. Those who are friends in this life can become enemies in the future. Those who are enemies in this life, they can become friends in the future life. So therefore, they are changeable and they are impermanent. So therefore, it is very important not to have some kind of, grasping towards friends and enemies. If we grasp on friendship or animosity as something real, then these kind of thoughts become the source of attachment and aversion. And when there are attachment and aversion, that is the source of all problems, all sufferings. Since attachment and aversion are the causes which make us take birth in the lower realms of samsara, we need to get rid of these two emotions and consider all living beings as our own father, as our own mother, or as our own children. That's how the Buddhas of the past practice, by extending equal love and compassion to all living beings without any discrimination.
This simple angan test will la deva mi pa zon ro ko ri tin te da sam no tong ne ti ta ho che dang me che ta ta lo yang ne dang ta gong go le di so ta ho ma ga sa re gon.
So if we want to develop a state of mind which is free from attachment and aversion, it is important to begin by having the loving and kind mind towards our enemies. So therefore, in the practice of immeasurable equanimity, we can think of one person that we detest, that we dislike, and then try to feel good about that person. So it's in the beginning a job for the mind. So we try to be loving, try to be kind to that person. So in this way we can train our mind to get rid of attachment and aversion. It is also important to realize that the afflictive emotions of attachment and aversion are too heavy for the mind. And when the mind gets exhausted with these emotions, then it also brings some problems in the body. Even it can cause all kinds of sicknesses. So therefore, understanding these negative results of the afflictive emotions such as attachment and so forth, we can try to feel more encouraged to be loving and kind towards enemies.
Ta nga la ti sem la ma ga sa ta ta da wo bin kong tho che dang lang do sa ta da la lo yang ne sa mo tong du ti te lo yang ni yang do yang du ta rang na phin yang ma ta no yang ma chi ti ba ma ke ma ti la ti te yo thu le ta te sa pa ta ho lo yang ne ta kho la nga lang ko ya ma do nga lang na nga rang sem thu ban ma do mi ma do kho ga ta nga chon nu chi ma ra sin ti nga lin cha plong lo te re ke do sa mo ta re ke do chi ang du ta te kho nga la phin yang ma ta no yang ma chi pa ma ba ma re ti la ti yo thu le ta ho ta da lo yang go so.
So in the beginning you can visualize one enemy in order to practice equanimity, and then try to get rid of hatred towards that person. When you keep training your mind in that, gradually that same enemy appears to you like a neutral person, a person who is not really an enemy but not really a friend. So until that happens, it is important to focus on the enemy. And also it is helpful to think about the harmfulness of anger, harmfulness of hatred. Hatred, as soon as it enters in our mind, it creates obstacles, it creates distractions, and it makes us helpless to slip in confusion, and then we perceive everything with an error.
Ta ti ma par ma til ta sam no ta na ti te chra thoma mi pa ka tu ne ti rang ka phama ma je pa mi pa phama se pa ti rang ka ma chu pa ta da la sang dong ne ta te ki che wan de ka phama nga ki phama ta ha che wan de phama u so nga nyen di nyen nyen ti na nga ka chi che wa che dong da ka che nga ka sem ka che wa da na te ta de ti ta ti ma par ma tham che ti che wa de yo de lang te da lo yang go so.
And then when you have, in your practice, when you have transformed your enemy into somebody who is neutral, now the next step you can think about the truth that all sentient beings have our parents. All sentient beings have been kind and compassionate at one point of the time we spend in samsara. So therefore this neutral being also deserves our affection and love and compassion, because they have shown love and affection in former lives to us.
Tin thani ta da ta ni par ma song ka te tin nga kan ha yo la che sem chi thap chi ta rang ke chen de pha ma tang che mi pa ti rang ke che be to po ga sa la che mi pa ti te lan hing ge che ba tan da ka lo ma chi par to gom tin tan da lo ma chi par to tan da gom ma chi na ti rang ke da pha nu chin du a mi phi ta do mi le tan da pha ta nhom re sna ta mok ta nhom so ti phi mi nu me son te ang che mi pa ka tho ro ho la ma ti te ke ta rang ke che wan de tho ni ta ni ni chin pha ma la ka che che wa na ti te cha ma la ta da ni par ma song ka te data do tin che ba te le re tanda lo jang go so.
So in this way, the training of immeasurable equanimity should go on until we are able to have the same kind of affection, same kind of love for all living beings. When we are able to regard each and every living being as our own parents. Equanimity doesn't mean to be in a blank mind. It doesn't mean not to care about anybody and not to harm anybody. It means not to care, not to harm anybody, but to care about everyone with the same heart, with the same feeling. So if we are just in a kind of, if we stop harming others and if we stop being kind to others, that kind of equanimity is a kind of ignorance. In this life, usually, most of the time, we have very special love and affection towards our mother. So when this kind of feeling becomes available in your heart for all living beings without exception, at that point it is called immeasurable equanimity, because the number of sentient beings is immeasurable. It is vast as the space, and when your compassion is extended to each and every living being, it also becomes immeasurable. So after we have trained our mind in the immeasurable equanimity, then the next step we can take is to train in immeasurable love. By the practice of immeasurable equanimity, our mind becomes absolutely free from discriminations. We have the same kind of feelings towards all sentient beings. Now, in the practice of immeasurable love, we try to develop the willingness, the wish to benefit all sentient beings who are now equal to us, who are now equally, dear to us. So this practice of love is analogous to a mother bird trying to feed her chick.
Tiranga tap na ba na tho ko ti tap jan tap bo tap khona asan ma ong do ne tiranga lunga yi som ka ke le tum ba si ne ton da si ti pe te ta do da sem ti te da tham che la ti sema deva tang ne ka te ni deva te ni ka ko da se ni ke deva tu na tiranga lunga yi som ka ke be ba si go khyu ni som ne.
So the kind of love a mother bird has for its chicks is very strong and it's very profound. The mother bird can withstand any kind of obstacles, any kind of difficulties in the process of bringing up the chicks. The mother bird knows various methods to make the baby birds comfortable, to protect them, to make sure that they are safe and they are warm and so forth. So in the same way, through the practice of loving kindness, we can train our mind to have the same kind of feeling towards all living beings. And with that kind of feeling, we can temporarily establish sentient beings in more fortunate states of samsaric existence. And in the long run, with that kind of feeling, we can establish sentient beings in Buddhahood, the ultimate achievement. Each and every living being wish to be happy. Each living being always find out ways to be happy, to be content, and so forth. So, therefore, we need to be loving and kind towards these sentient beings because they wish happiness and do not wish suffering. However, these sentient beings are too ignorant. They wish happiness, but they always create the causes of suffering. They wish to get rid of sufferings, but they do not know how to get rid of suffering. They mistake the cause of happiness for the cause of suffering, the cause of suffering for the cause of happiness. In this way, they are lost in ignorance, and therefore we need to develop the genuine kind heart of loving kindness, which is the definition of which is wishing all sentient beings to be happy. That is the definition of loving kindness. It's a wish for all sentient beings to be happy. It is very important to train our mind until we feel that ourselves and other sentient beings are one and the same. One and the same in the sense that like we wish to be happy, they also wish to be happy. Like we wish to get rid of sufferings, they also wish to get rid of sufferings. So therefore all sentient beings deserve happiness, and all sentient beings have the right to be free from suffering. So therefore we need to have this heart which is in equanimity, which can accommodate all living beings. In the scripture it is said that take your own body as an example and do not harm others. It is also important to train ourselves in loving kindness and compassion physically. It means that we should train ourselves to look at sentient beings with a very, kind face, with a very open face, we need to speak to them with pleasant words that are soothing and that brings great feeling to them. Like in the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, Shantideva advises, in order to train in the path of bodhisattvas, even if you are looking at sentient beings, look straight with the smiling face that is, admirable, that is pleasant. So this is also a part of training in a good heart, in bodhicitta. And then even we can train our speech in the bodhisattva conduct or activity. If we use harsh words, if we speak unpleasantly to others, then such words can bring a lot of suffering to others. So therefore, we need to abstain from harsh words that are unpleasant to hear. It is said that unpleasant words do not have an edge of a blade, but they are able to cut the mind of sentient beings into pieces. So therefore, we have to be very careful with our speech, our words, and always try not to despise others, always try not to put down others, and always try to be truthful and pleasant in our words. That's the verbal training of being kind. So in the practice of loving kindness, it is important not to be a hypocrite. It's important to be genuine in the practice of loving kindness. For instance, if you practice loving kindness so that you can become famous, so that you will be repaid in the same way by others, if these kind of expectations are there in your practice, then it's improper. For instance, if you speak pleasantly, if you speak truthfully to others, and if you behave like a bodhisattva because you wish to be famous, you wish to be revered by others, you want recognition and so forth, then that kind of practice of loving kindness is incorrect, and it's based on some kind of self-interest. So therefore, the practice of loving kindness should be genuine. It should come straight from your heart, and it should be completely selfless. In the practice of loving kindness, it's also important to have perpetual mindfulness, and at all times we need to make supplications so that we become someone who is harmless to sentient beings, so that we can become someone who can be beneficial, who can be helpful and kind and compassionate to others throughout the lives that we might take in samsara. And also, it's very important to maintain a very friendly relationship with companions, with people with whom we live, because every relationship are impermanent, and we are all like different guests assembled in one place, and very soon we are going to separate from each other. So therefore, it is very important to maintain a very friendly atmosphere among companions and among the people with whom we live. And also, occasionally it's important to reflect on the great benefits of training our body, speech and mind in loving kindness.
Traga Rinpoche levni tanda tharen levni ta jumi da tanda ma kale khadi da yung Rinpoche da nadi ne banda da phama tante lodang thompo ri gen khori de tanda thapar da ti samba samjong si samjong jina toni ning jing po ji gom de la ti chebar mi song tanda ne kong da nga na ni ti te da ti phama thamche thapar la rang ke paji ke tya ba si ne te tin cheba ke tin chin ba si ne ti te gen kho tu la ti ye me ju ba de Nakpa la pinyon che, tin te ka si che che na tin te xiang che pa jing de pa che song de tanda ne da ma jo je sa je ke tanda song ni song de lo.
And the great master Atisha has advised his disciples to have special loving kindness and compassion towards people who have come from a very long way, and to people who have been sick for a long time, and parents. These kind of beings deserve special love and compassion. If one can train in loving kindness and compassion towards these kind of people and all sentient beings, then that kind of practice is equivalent to the practice of the unification of emptiness and compassion. Such a practice of being loving and kind and compassionate to people who are sick and parents and so forth is equivalent to the practice of uniting compassion and emptiness.
Samjong ya po si te korang ge yila ka den te da to jong no ji na tin te ge te pe rang ge da pin yong chen bo thop je la tin rang ge sam ba sang po jie xia de la yong tin ya po yo le ri song ne da.
And also Guru Padma Sambhava has said that taking care of people who are of age, people who are old, if we show them our love and affection through our body, speech and mind, and take care of them, that is a very powerful practice, and it has great benefit.
Tin ta ta ran nam ga ta chin khor ba zong tan da de chi chen chin ne ba me ji thap ma da san ne tan da san na san he de ne ba si no go ja yo ma ri song ne ba se de ge chung khor ba san ne pin yo ma ri chen chin ne ba pha ja ne no le ran chong khor kho ri chen de tho ni da tin ta me de ba cha ji da sama dong ha man pha pin ba yong ho ti pen na me re se ka na ti te la ma tong ji go ji da rang ga ti so lin ji go le da da yin lo ni non tho ko ya yo tha se kha na ti rang ge ju khol le da da si ti pha ti tin thap tu go ba ta la so ba ti rang ka ngan the du ko me ge ga de na no pa karti gan ti no ne zara chon khoringa ma to te khoba sing na thinya yu ma ri song ne ring da.
Then we might have the question that since we are in this world, there's no way for us to always abstain from harming others. We have to harm others at some point of our life. But if we really think deeply about this, then harming others is not beneficial at all times, not even in this life. For instance, if we harm a person, if we kill a person, for instance, then as a result of that negative karma, we have to face different punishments, and we lose a lot of wealth in some cases. So therefore, the non-virtuous deeds of harming others bring unhappiness at all times.
Ta te ta ti rang ke ma pha no pa se na te ke phin pa me pa te chi li ke ti dim sin ke ta kham sam na ne pe sem kin tham chi la ti rang ke phin na de na te de ba thon na chem ma ro nya ba tan da ka sam ba ke zong do ne ti kham sam sem kin tham chi ta rang ke lu nga yi song ko ni ti sam ba ke ta de ba tan tin pa re tan da sam ba re sam na che le tan da la ta nga ka thap ne tan da sam na tan chat le ta lo jong tho ko de ri zong te ke ta sam ba de zo.
So therefore, it is very important to have a great understanding that by harming others, there is no way to be happy. So therefore, if we get rid of harming others, then that becomes the source of happiness. And because of that, it is advisable, it is more intelligent to be loving and kind to all sentient beings in the 3,000 worlds. In this way, as a result of such infinite loving kindness, we can accomplish great benefits.
Ta hinje gom je la thol den hinje la ti hinje ngon ro ta semchi dong ha ta po ka nar de le semchi shi la ti me do ne ti dong ha ke ne te ta ta ba re nga ka san na sa ne te hinje ne ti dong ha tran na sa ne ta ra sa ba su ne ta hinje ngo te so de ba.
So the next practice after love is compassion, the immeasurable compassion. The definition of compassion is wishing sentient beings to be free from suffering.
Ta pen na me na ki re zong dong na jiu ne ti ko zong che zong tai mi de li de dong ha chen bo ku de wu na ta de da le rang ke sem ke hin je ba ta ti ni xin ba ke la ta dun ro re so su ju re tan da che ma khan de le de na ti ko lo su no li ke ni kha dong ha ba ta tan che san do ti tan da la ta sem ke hin je thop de ta do me go le ri so ne.
So in practice of immeasurable compassion, we can think about somebody who is in the prison, who is suffering, who is undergoing a lot of suffering in prison. Or we can think about animals who are in the house of slaughter, who is about to be killed. If we think about the pain, the anguish, the suffering such sentient beings feel, then that can trigger compassion.
Ta pe na xie lo de na ta xin pa te su la nye ka te la na ta yin re ten da xie lo su hu da sam san de yin lo le yo no ti lo de pa bon do ne te rang yin pa le sam no tang ta rang yin na ta che tar si san ti na sam no tong ti ta rang yin na ta te tu sa tang jia sa ni thon ne me shi ka bi me shi tan da re sam no tong ne ti rang ke chi bong ke pa go go na go ma tho ta ka ra ta na sa ti phol thola dong ha rang ka no yo da ta tho sam no tong do ti tin je ti tho go kho yu ri so ne.
So it's also what we can do in this practice is try to put ourselves in the place of that animal who is about to be slaughtered, or try to put ourselves in the place of the prisoner, and try to feel the pain, try to feel the fear. What would we do if we were in that situation?
Tate along the line has a dead and was so you saw one bone garden quality one gar leaked don't have a chair. Tate gets hard to think in so like dinner that don't have a chair. That and dollars I'm not on the thing, don't have the rank and that don't have on the rank that hot to land on it. Take that Lord John to go she goes on that.
So we can think about the pain of separating the body and consciousness in the case of the animals who is about to be slaughtered. And after the consciousness has been separated from the body, it has to follow its karma, and it has to take birth in the lower realms of samsara and so forth. If we take all these sufferings on ourselves, if we put ourselves into this situation, and for a while if we pretend to be that animal, then that can help us develop the heart of compassion. And also all sentient beings who are suffering, who are imprisoned, who are the victim of slaughters, they have been our parents, and they have been kind and compassionate to us. And now all these mother sentient beings are in tremendous suffering. In this way, when we feel intense compassion towards others, finally we feel so moved that we can feel tears from our eyes. Until this until that happens, we need to train in the immeasurable compassion. And then we can reflect on the karmas that sentient beings create. Sentient beings are suffering in different ways as a result of their former bad karmas. And even now they are continuing to create more and more negative karmas, which are going to result in sufferings in the future. So we can look at this situation of sentient beings and try to feel compassion, because they are too ignorant. They are creating the cause of their own sufferings. And also we can think about sentient beings in the hell realm, sentient beings in the animal realm, sentient beings in the hungry ghost realm, and so forth. In the hell realm, sentient beings have the suffering of getting burnt, the suffering of getting boiled and chopped and cut and so forth. In the animal realm, sentient beings have the suffering of being stupid, and the suffering of being killed by each other, the suffering of being used by humans and so forth. And then in the hungry ghost realm, they have the suffering of thirst and hunger. In this way, all sentient beings in the 6 realms go through different kinds of sufferings. And if we reflect carefully on this nature, then that can also bring compassion in our hearts. In this kind of various ways, when we develop compassion for all sentient beings, equally, when all sentient beings are included in our compassion, that is called immeasurable compassion.
That is great. Told me, the sentient country, and how don't have Bakchad and Jepat and Jane. The India Deva Zopas Hanji, the companion Tom the Jamano, Yampatin, Hinkapat and Darcy. The India Deva Popeye horse and the Dam Huna Judge that, and that your uncle chase on that.
So, out of such great compassion, we need to always pray, always supplicate, so that all sentient beings become liberated from all sufferings of the samsaric existence and attain the ultimate happiness of enlightenment.
I think he going to Taranga, you so they got the thought in it, don't have young to buy Yam Tati, but simply can't let me do it and I can get around the jealous in the Gongo Kuri Mato Young, the Daga Lord Yom Matona, the young party chap, son like Gom den, take a chap, cohort and a little thing get Yimba around the Jute Game, a told you so take the hand young to buy the Mexican don't think I'm the Jute Tablet and having soon she go to this on him.
In order to make a compassion to really take place in our mind, in our heart, we need to be very practical. We need to think about, a particular sentient being who is suffering and feel genuine compassion for that person, and then proceed. After having felt genuine compassion for one person, then we can feel the same for 2 and 3 and 4 and finally all sentient beings. Otherwise, if we just try to have a general compassion which has no particular object, then that kind of compassion cannot really progress. So therefore, we need to begin very practically with one person and then extend to all.
He said, Mamma, you didn't have it, and I come trot on the color. Then Dala, the part, the Gapache, Dokela, Hinja somebody, for Chili, so that it Hinja somebody, they could partake dog to the Della Cosande, the part the dancing, round so that sort of yin so down the Chadang said the case, 100 days, the dong to the Marie, so on here,
so through the practice of compassion, we can even get rid of fears caused by humans, fear caused by non-humans, and all other obstacles. Without the compassionate heart, if we try to avert enemies or obstructors through anger, through hatred, it is not possible. It is only through the heart of compassion we can get rid of enemies and obstructors.
Tiết ta bề gia nang dịp tôi mà la để bà không long chong cái dòng sát na tí không yok nu bạc la cái dịp bom bên này cả rồi thì chom chọt tí này tí à ra mấy phô ko sam để bà tan ra không dầm chơi nè để tan ra xin tí không la salo la pen as nam la pen tan ra dễ thì ta không cái đàn ha la so ta để tí đàn ha gom kia ram gom ha trang ha để thì à rồi tham gia phan ro mà đồ tao cho gì dễ tụ này tan ra sẽ ta cả ra na sam không thâu san tăng được ngã ta làm mà phao ra mà pa cái tí na si Samsung ngồi trên xem như ở ra ông ba như là ngồi để để pa yên chứ ta đường cái xe đồ giống này thì đang cái tan ra si qua ya mà đồ thế ta si qua đúng mà đồ
na si Samsung ngồi trên khán
xem như ông ba ngồi trên na si tham gia Samsung ngồi trên xem như ông ba ngồi trên rồi có ra xem như ông bà ra là ngồi trên thì tí tàn tên ta bắt đầu là vô này tí tổ nhân hình bộ để cái gì xin thôi na ta ghét rồi là dòng vô để đi mà đâu sao này tí không có thể làm được đàng hoàng để trên tí làm để tham chế không để đền tí bà đền để gì để này tổ nhân cái hình bộ dòng để tí đền để gì tí tại anh ta tham chế cũng phá trừ này tự thân này tí trừ sông sa thì tí hình cái thành đại tự thập sa rồi tại để cái kia mà
in the life of Milarepa, there is an incident when he conquered obstructors through compassion. Once he was in a cave called Choklung Tsang, and then when he came out of the cave for some purpose, and then when he returned, he found some kind of demons in his cave, and these demons had huge eyes, and they were kind of retinues of the king of demons. At that point, in order to get rid of these demons, first Milarepa made supplications to his Idam, and then he did the generation stage practice, the visualization, and then he began to say mantras of wrathful activities. But that did not make any difference. The demons remained in the cave, and then finally Milarepa realized that his master Marpalotawa had introduced all the whole world of appearances and possibilities as the projection of his own mind, and then his mind had been introduced by Marpalotawa to be the unity or unification of compassion and wisdom. And when he realized that, when he remembered that instruction of his master, he felt tremendous unconditional compassion for the demons, and right away the demons left the cave. So that's how Milarepa got rid of those maras, those demons, through the power of compassion.
Namna songchebi ito tan tal hande ke nyorne to songchebi jote samo to on to wi ni ti kap tin ni dari da se mo te ke from 13 ne ke da zhe da chen bo to da da ti ma da de pa te ke ti ma tho yin ne da ari yor na che da me che song ne na sam ne sa to tho te sa nan turn de tin thwa te tin yin to de ne ti tu ko kam da da de ni da se mo te che ma mo pro de ne da ma da de pa sha ban ju ne ri sa ka wo ti khong ne so ya han tin du Takbala Pantina, Chakamangato, Titacho Salagana, so Tanga Tony, that needs come at the Ranjatami, something, Hong Tava Denki, the young Tonave, Song the Vito, that should around the sin of contained dog, choose and come and I see contained dog that need to ask more third more Lolane. La Pata do the sunny song, said Chu Pata do the sunny song that is. Semi get any the machine, two songs in an arm rose. Ramson on Bato, Madonna, then I met Yin Yu, don't think they hear. Rasa mo chu ngan tu ma ti pass hong de kong se so ya an tin tin ro ma ben pan tin de sa ni ta kong le
the percept do the kadis
ban ta do the sani song so de ni sani song de ti sam ke de ni de hi ma thap na chu ke song de na se le ke ngan ro le ma chu ke sam ke tong ni de to ma thap na de nga ma chen de ma mo de yin da yang yu ri
tong ni so ding ning je ma so at another time Milarepa was fully absorbed in samadhi, in meditation, and in that cave, in that area, there was a kind of female demon who had made her place in the rock, in front of which Milarepa was meditating. And usually, demons and obstructors cannot harm a yogi when he or she is in meditative absorption. So that demon was just waiting for an opportunity to test Milarepa. She was just waiting for Milarepa to get out of his meditative absorption in the state of conventional thought. So this demon made some noise, and Milarepa kind of thought that what kind of noise is it, and that was a kind of discursive thought, and that became an opportunity for the demon to really manifest, and she manifested to Milarepa as a red dog, a female dog, and then began to bite Milarepa's feet, and she wouldn't let it go. And then Milarepa kind of pulled his feet out of the mouth of the dog, and the dog pull it, the other way. So at that point, Milarepa reflected on the unification of compassion and emptiness, and at that point the dog released his toe, his feet or toe, and then the dog told Milarepa that all demons and all maras that appear are projections of your own habitual patterns. If you realize the true nature of the mind, there is no demon. But if you have not realized the true nature of mind, I am not the only demon. There are many more to come.
nga da samo yang tin chi kan bang sun chat thol ri chi kan bang khol la tin da ne thol ri nge chi da thong ne da se go hu ma ri de eng de da tin san de de rang san de chin de da de da din thok go hu ri ma to san de de tin tel pa simmer la zong dun tel shadang ke dul ke san de kalan dor thot de dor thol ma ri de da na ta zan hing je je ne che ri son ta da ma nang da.
So, the female demon in her song to Milarepa, she also says that when the true nature of your mind is realized, in that realization there is no self-grasping, no notion of the self. At that point, the emptiness and compassion are unified. There is no self because there is the realization of emptiness, and there is unconditional compassion because of not having this ego-centeredness. Because in the absence of ego fixation, in the absence of the wrong notion of self, there is the unity of compassion and wisdom. That is called absolute bodhicitta. And the demon said that all kinds of situations, all kinds of incidents that are obstacles in the path, they are all coming from the self-cherishing attitude. If you realize, the demon said to me, if you realize the true nature of mind, and if you awaken in the unification of emptiness and compassion, then all demons become your kind of retinues. Even I will become your friend. So therefore, by understanding all appearances as the mere projection of mind, it generates unconditional compassion. By the afflictive emotion of desire and hatred and so forth, there is no way to tame demons. There is no way to tame obstructors. That's what the demon said.
산진이 빠도지다 그러는 거지라 마마마다 되니 보더사도 제반 괜히 제반서 콩남바 요루들라 되니 단다서네다 보는게 추르니 니한서 남부출라 튼바레 리마라니 심지는 제바시다 되니 제바세네 도웨다tin ta tin ba chik la twin ba ni yong ni ma ri chlo chik la slow yong ni ma tin so ran ro jin den te do song du khon na fa twin ma jin na tin thok twin ne lo te ke ma che ke la den do to da la ne tin te ke yang ye se tin khon na fa ke sun chu tham che ma ji tin da se le ri so ne ri tin ta da chu
ke bu chi song de jing ge kap su ro
ri ti kap su ri
ene sha chu jing de su re
pompo ko tin da se ra
ene kong ge gen ro chi su le ke ji she
de da pon ta song de tin da ko da wo ra de tong ho ma ra pompo tin da se no ho ma ra song te tin sang ha sa mo chu de ta pon do chen tin sem kin ba se tin na tin te ke ten ba la tong ko le pon ho kang bin ko le ri te ong na ma ri song ta ta rang na so ta na ba go le ko tin na ba go le ko tu ta te kin ho chu so tin da chu na ka ti jim dang pa re ni ke te ta ro go le ri so na ta dang nga te na ne tin te ta de tu ta sem kin chwa me ri ju tin ka chwa yin ba ti ta de rang de min sa zong to ba ta ti rang ge ma sa sa zong ru bu ku zhong ne ti sem kin tham che la phin che tho ka sam ba ta tong ye shi go le ri so ne da sang hin je sang chok san khon na ti ju ji ngi ba ri ta tan da re sin ne de be go le so ne da
during the time of the Dharma king Chisong Dechen, when Buddhism was yet to flourish in Tibet, the practitioners of Bon religion, they practice animal sacrifice, and they use blood and so forth as offerings. At that point, the second Buddha, Guru Padmasambhava, and the great abbot Vimalamitra and Shantarakshita, they became very disappointed by those kind of practices, and they told the king that if you do not order these people to stop these non-virtuous deeds, there is no way to, kind of incorporate Buddhism in this kind of culture. So first you have to make the rule to get rid of animal sacrifices and all other kinds of rituals that are harmful to others. In this way, from the beginning, Guru Padmasambhava and these great masters encourage non-violence and encourage to get rid of harming sentient beings, and advise the people in Tibet to always train their minds in loving kindness and compassion, and get rid of harming others.
Tata Pata di Chuyer Poche, the Nigawa La Poche, the Dr. Lake, and Dark Main to me, Jang, Ranga Jula, San Hinja Poche, the Chutanchi, Rangalan, tell it the Bata, the own so. The Bajon, Hinja, and Hinja, La Bakatin, Chumi, so on. This Sancho sent to my impact, Jula, Yamanova, Hinja, the Yin, so on that being released on.
So, if you have developed compassion in your heart, then that's it, and that's what you try to achieve through the path of Dharma. Even if you are not learned in different kinds of sciences, different kinds of subjects of Dharma, if you have the heart of compassion, then you have accomplished all Dharma. It's like the entire Dharma has come into your palms. And also, the feeling of compassion is a very powerful antidote to non-virtuous deeds and defilements. Through compassion, you can purify all non-virtuous deeds and defilements. And of course, compassion is one of the root cause of bodhicitta, the awakened mind.
다때 처처티때 가르트라나 삼페 들더니 행 탁바니 체 힝제기 체그 무조네 디빠데 체그 무조네 힝제게네 다때 저 거리산 동한 쪼와거든 때 투미 바리 다리리티 데리 다 건초 좀나 소란데네 다때 힝제 고네 다때 디 동한테 달레 게 뼈틀레 오이 코사 다 모나 소란데디 생게 때 루메퍼반다 다도 산지 단지 동하지 다 쳇다나 때 탈탈 쳇오나 삼산도 섬다 소로 생내에 온 곳은 이 따라들 야다.
So the feeling of compassion should be so strong, should be unbearable to your heart. For instance, if a mother without hands has a lovely child, and if the child is being drawn in a river, how desperate would she feel? How compassionate would she feel towards her child? In the same way, we need to feel very strong, unbearable compassion towards sentient beings, and always make supplications to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, so that all these sentient beings are protected and are blessed with our compassion.
다 가와 검조대리 가와 검도 진짜 선진 탐체의 레르다 돔조 나탕 카디에 롱주데 체레와 코르마마 롱주 예바 던다리데 탐체의 랑게 들은 차도 단 린신 메지네 진짜라 랑게 가와 검조대다 가와 고모데
디칸에 돔조 왕탕 망보시 생각 고친
카디에 왕탕 롱주
카제
왕탕 롱주 체레와 코르마마 다 던다리 될 때가 되니 랑게 차도 단 린신이 봐 될 던다리 기들 생각 저기 가와 고모데 달라 다 kon ta to ya pori da san te ko yin ya pori de rang sam ga ki ta ga ba kon to te.
So then finally the fourth immeasurable is immeasurable joy. So the practice of immeasurable joy is about getting rid of jealousy and trying to be appreciative of the achievements of others. For instance, when some people seem to be in great position, when some people seem to be having great power, great authority, and great wealth, and wonderful life, free from sicknesses, and great companions, great people around. When this kind of happiness of others are seen, we should not be jealous of them, but rather appreciative of it. We should rejoice in the fact that these sentient beings are having a wonderful life, a life free from sickness and so forth. So when this kind of feeling of joy, joy meaning and the feeling of appreciation towards others reach all sentient beings, that is the immeasurable joy.
나를 가데 논주다 빈데 선지긴 다를 통바들 니랑 가와 검졌다 다른 거 데를 학바들 공토 빠진 요 바다 이 다리 가데 논주 딘데서 세바미 봐 그래서 다른 시랍 쳐봤다 시랍 쳐리 이 노론주데 코 배주 튼바랬다 거기에 소를 거튼 바라는 코배 투내를 다 시랍다 디 바시네 이 코는 표선 속바게 요바리 온 코사 다른 티칼라
And when we see people who are happy and who are well and who has great wealth, we shouldn't be jealous of them, but we should instead make supplications in our hearts so that they can become happier, so that they can become wealthier, so that they can get better and better. And also we can make great supplications in our mind, in our hearts, so that they develop the great intentions in which way they can utilize their wealth, their life for the service of others. So this kind of thinking is part of the training of immeasurable joy.
Kaja long to Jete Pate, I was thinking Kaja long to me, Batam, Theatre, Jena Jamaron, Theatre, Jepake, Rina Narga, Yamati, Yani, and the Ranka Senator Dari, Lord Jeta Paris, Judah. Tinte Rana Gawa Jet Tampo, Lord Jampaka, Rang Jet Hasa, Ranka Patesa Gasari, Sam Cesari, Latina Kaja long to Din de Leona, Tinta, Tela Gawa Jet Ha, the Kawang, the Teltamo Jet, Tinti Tani. Rang part la tie ji tin cha ni rang ke an da wo ma ga sa la kha ji long ju na tin te da ni long sin ga tha don din sin mi ji ni ga wa de to chot kiel ta le bin ta to yang go song.
And then also we can think about people who are not famous, who do not have great status, who are not wealthy, and try to develop the genuine wish for them to be wealthy, for them to be prosperous, for them to be famous and so forth. In the practice of immeasurable joy, it is appropriate to begin with somebody to whom we have great affection. Think about a person who is loving towards us, with whom we have a great relation, and then try to develop the wish for that person so that he or she can be wealthy, rich, and live long, and so forth. And then after that, we can think about somebody who is neutral, who is neither a friend nor an enemy, and try to have the same kind of wishes, same kind of great feelings toward that person. And then finally, we can think about an enemy, and try to have the feeling of joy, feeling of appreciation towards that enemy. So that's how you can progress in the training.
Ta yin kha je long ju je de tin la pa la rang da ta tin ma ga sa tin da kha je long ju je de na tin de la ta tha do ta nu sin rin sin tin da ga ko long yin pha za wa dong yin pha song thu le sin ne ti de la de wa da de pa cha tham je la ti ga wa che pa ti ne gong ne ti ga wa da rang yu la je ga ba ngang tin na ti nyang ja bo ni me me pa ngang yo ko song ti de ta ba ta hyong ke ta na to yo ta hyong ti na ta hyong de ta ho lo de yong ta hyong de rang ga ju je cha du simply tham chit nyang thom parin dang ti nga na to nyam ja mi me pa ngang ni go samba la te ta de go hin je te ta go ga wa te ta go ti che mi je le ta kho to go du ta hyong che mi ke me pa ta hyong che mi ong ho le ti te la ta hyong ke nyam ja hin je ke nyam ja samba ke nyam ja ga wa ke nyam ja ke ti te ra go ho le ri song le te to lo chit chat ti ni me pa ngang na ji ni go ko le ri song.
So in this way, when you train your mind to be joyful with the achievements of others, when you train your mind to rejoice in the well-being, in the prosperity and wealth of others, gradually you can get rid of jealousy, and you can feel extreme joy in your mind. So when this joy dawns in your mind, at that point you can try to just absorb in that joy and set your mind one-pointedly on that joy. In the same way, when you're practicing equanimity, first you train your mind in equanimity, and when your mind becomes free from attachment and aversion, when it reaches the state of equanimity, try to absorb in that, try to be in that state of equanimity one-pointedly. It's a kind of meditation. So that is called the meditative absorption on equanimity, meditative absorption on joy. And in the same way, when you are practicing loving kindness, by developing the wish for sentient beings to be happy, when you finally feel the existence of loving kindness in you, in that state, try to meditate, try to absorb in that state, and try to be one-pointedly in that state. That is called meditative absorption on loving kindness. And the same thing can be done with compassion. When you feel genuine compassion for living beings, all living beings, try to abide in that state, try to be absorbed in that state one-pointedly as long as you can. So that's how you can practice the 4 immeasurables. So the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas always aspire to establish sentient beings temporarily in the higher states of samsara and then ultimately in the state of Buddhahood. That's the only thing they always try to achieve. That's the only thing they always have in their intention. In order to follow in their steps, we need to train ourselves in getting rid of jealousy. Jealousy is a kind of blindfold. When our mind is occupied by jealousy, it is very hard to see the good qualities in others. So therefore, it is very hard to appreciate the goodness of others. So therefore, it is very important to get rid of the afflictive emotion of jealousy so that we can appreciate the prosperity and wealth and health and so forth of others. We have no reason to be jealous of them because they are happy, they are wealthy and so forth as a result of their own great karmas, and that's what they deserve, and we have no right to be jealous of that. So it is very important to realize that the afflictive emotion of jealousy and competitiveness, the afflictive emotion of being competitive. These afflictive emotions are great obstructions in the path of Dharma. When these afflictive emotions are there in our mind, it's very hard to see even the great qualities of the Buddhas. Therefore, people with intense jealousy and the competitive emotions, they cannot be helped by the Buddhas. For instance, because of jealousy, such a person cannot see the good qualities of the Buddhas. And when the good qualities of the Buddhas are not seen, that person definitely cannot develop faith and devotion in the Buddha. And without faith and devotion in the Buddha, there is no way to receive the blessing of the Buddha. So, therefore, jealousy is a great obstacle in seeing the good qualities, in developing devotion, in receiving blessing. In the time of the Buddha Shakyamuni himself, there were certain people who couldn't see any quality in the Buddha because of their, mind filled with jealousy and pride and so forth. For instance, Devadatta and another monk by the name of Lekpe Karma, I don't know the name in Sanskrit, but Devadatta, the cousin of the Buddha, he couldn't find the Buddha to be a Buddha. He always found the Buddha to be somebody very bad. That was because of his jealousy.
Samba Zampo Kona, and the Samba Zambori, get Samba Zampo, Yegotini. This Samba Geta Migiseda, Gede Zuni, Young Gimdo, so Samba Zampo, Getana, could Samba take a journal to leg and not the top on the Samba Rale, to Samba journal, so this Samba Zampo will have to be the Gachi, so that's.
So the four immeasurables are the main causes of bodhicitta. If one wishes bodhicitta to be established in the mind, then it's important to train the mind in the four immeasurables. The quintessence of the four immeasurables is to have a good heart. So if you always aspire to have a very good heart, a heart which is open, which is kind towards others, then that's the essence of the four immeasurables. When a heart is open, when it is good, when it is virtuous, then all actions that follows are also virtuous. The virtuous deeds and the non-virtuous deeds, they are reflections of virtuous and non-virtuous states of mind. So whatever you do on the basis of a virtuous thought, it is virtuous deed. Whatever you do on the basis of a non-virtuous thought, that whatever that deed, whether it's verbal or physical, it is non-virtuous. So therefore, we need to focus more on the state of mind and make sure it is virtuous, rather than focusing on the action.
Samba Zampo, Regati Randu, and Timmy Parake, and Samba Zampo, get like a Lunga, like a cut, then and like a Gaval, your top song. Randu and Timmy, Samba Zampo, Lunga, like I send a Gaval, your top song.
So, with a good heart, whatever you say, whatever you do, become virtuous deeds. Without such a heart, even if your speech and actions are seemingly virtuous, they are in fact non-virtuous, because based on non-virtuous motivations. Okay, you have a question?
Stabilizing the training and four immeasurable, stabilizing in loving and compassion. How do we stabilize our mind?
Penarwa, Dirwala, Kasa Chambatang Ninja Irwa, Dindenal Semchik, Temba Toya Jurwa, Champenang la Champegi Temba Toya, Ninja Temba Toya Jurwa, did Tabla Conditions.
Samba, Ninja, the whole Kundoka, Sankin and Nugget, Sancho, Sam Domli, Dombali, Dombati, Songo, Domba Son. Don't bat the Manyan that I'm seeing you down, the same you down to Nisha Yoga. I'm here with down to the Bomba Langa, Samba, Javasi, and Japa, and take it, and that is on a cake. See, did Bomba Langa, the Manyams and Sonzak, Sons and Tamjade. Sentin Tamjan, Teva Mebzis, and Titam Jadi, the Bomba, get me days on the thing I could do the young code.
So you need to make two kind of, promises with yourself, that you are not going to give up the vow of bodhicitta. Not giving up the vow of bodhicitta means not giving up loving kindness and compassion. And the second promise is that no matter what, you are not going to harm any living being, but you are going to try to benefit sentient beings as much as you can. When these two convictions become very firmly rooted in you, then gradually you develop stability in the practice of love and compassion and so forth. So you have to kind of feel from your heart that you are supposed to be loving and kind, and in this way you can be more and more rooted in the practice.
Nimari to la tangala megave samba carating, gave samba carating, just tackets on megave samba regi and the day and for the rego, gave samba give the capo rego, tampon have it day and upon Mando cook. You need to Lord Jan Carpon upon a down. Tin Tani Carpo, Yaman, some Tama Carpo, and that over the comment.
So we need to keep training ourselves and get accustomed to love and compassion. For instance, in the past, the Kadampa masters, they used to keep a pile of black peoples on one side and a pile of white peoples on the other side, and then they sit down to meditate on loving kindness and compassion. And every time they notice a negative thought, they put one black people on one side, and every time they felt compassion and love and so forth, they put one white people on one side. So in this way, in the beginning, by the end of the session, they got more black peoples and less white peoples, and gradually the white increases and the black decrease, and finally they have only white peoples. That's how they trained their mind in bodhicitta, loving kindness. So in the same way, we need to train, keep doing, and it happens. Dedication, please.
By the power of his